1.6 MPI HR 16 to 115 horsepower, 2.0 MPI MR 20 to 141 horsepower. The first generation Nissan Qashqai is available on our roads with petrol and diesel engines. Both gasoline engines with a displacement of 1.6 and 2.0 liters are almost twins. They have aluminum cylinder blocks, a timing chain drive, and the valve lifters do not have hydraulic lifters. Both engines are quite strong and durable in terms of hardware, but on the very first cars they were noted to have stretched the timing chain. Newer chains can easily last up to 300,000 kilometers. At high mileage, an oil leak may appear at the junction of the pan with the cylinder block. There is no gasket there, and the factory sealant has ceased to perform its functions. What else should you pay attention to under the hood of gasoline Qashqais? It is not so uncommon for the plastic rubber pipe from the air filter to the throttle valve to crack. There are cases of oil emulsion appearing in the expansion tank. Oil is forced into the cooling system through the gasket between the cylinder block and the housing with the thermostat and pump. If you change the gasket, oil will stop getting into the antifreeze, but the cooling system will also have to be thoroughly flushed. There are antifreeze leaks along the gasket on the thermostat housing. There are known cases of rubbing of the lower radiator pipe on the plastic sleeve of the electrical wiring. Separately, you note that on a 2-liter engine it is necessary to change the spark plugs extremely responsibly. They need to be tightened with a torque of 19.6 Newton-meters. If you overpress it, the cylinder head can easily crack. Antifreeze will appear in the cylinders, and gases will appear in the cooling system. Both engines, in case of unsuccessful operation, i.e. if the owners skimped on engine oil, they can eat a lot of oil due to the presence of piston rings. Sometimes strange vibrations appear on Qashqai when the fan is running and the air conditioning compressor clutch is connected. Plus, when shifting gears, jerks are felt. A tired right engine mount, 11210 JD21B, is usually to blame. Nothing in its appearance shows signs of wear. The original support will cost $150. Substitutes exist, but none of them are worthy or durable. The same symptoms appear when the lower engine mount wears out. Cracks in its large damper can be seen from below. A new lower support costs $70. A fairly common problem with Nissan Qashqai is cracking of the expansion tank. Usually antifreeze flows out of it along the seam, but sometimes vertical cracks appear literally to the bottom, then the entire supply of antifreeze flows out of the tank. A new original tank, 21,721 JD00B, costs $75 and after replacement lasts about 5 years. There are many non-original tanks on sale. Sometimes owners install tanks from prior, they fit well and do not burst. When driving beyond 200,000 kilometers, you will have to replace the fuel pump. It will simply stop pumping fuel or will do it poorly, which will affect the starting of the engine and its ability to accelerate the crossover. The fuel pumps were changed under warranty because the outlet tube or even the body of its flask burst. At the same time, the smell of gasoline appeared from under the rear seat. 1.5 DC K9 K106 horsepower. Nissan Qashqai came to us from Europe, where they were available with 3 options of diesel units. All diesel engines are produced by Renault. The most common is the well-known and proven 1.5 DC engine. When driving over 200,000 kilometers, standard problems occur that are common to all diesel engines: pipes before and after the intercooler burst, the turbine control valve stops working adequately, and the EGR valve becomes dirty. As a rule, nothing serious happens to the engine, and the fuel system in particular. Don't forget to change the timing belt. Don't skimp on oil and filters. 1.6 DC R9M 130 horsepower. 2.0 DC M9 R 150 horsepower. Much less often, the first generation Qashqai is found with more recent 1.6 and 2.0 DC turbo diesels. These are literally identical motors. They also have a cast iron cylinder block, but they are driven by a timing chain, and there are 16 valves in the cylinder head. We also can't tell you anything bad or terrible about these units. In essence, everything is the same, from the intake pipes to the EGR. The timing drive kit with chain, sprockets, tensioner has to be changed at the turn of 300,000 kilometers. RS5F92 are 5-speed manual transmission. RS6F94 are 6-speed manual transmission. Nissan Qashqai is equipped with 5 and 6-speed gearboxes. Mechanical transmissions. No systematic problems have been observed with these gearboxes, but it's worth refreshing the oil in them at least once every 90,000 kilometers. Qashqai with 6 street mechanics, available in conjunction with a 2-liter gasoline engine and any turbo diesel, are equipped with a dual-mass flywheel. Cost of this part, from $750 to $1,300. A Nissan Qashqai with a classic automatic transmission is a rarity. This configuration is available only with a 2-liter turbo diesel. All other 2-pedal versions are equipped with CVTs. Let's talk about them. JF015E Variator. The 1.6-liter naturally aspirated engine received the unsuccessful JF015E Variator. This is a large collection of engineering mistakes and miscalculations. Probably every such Variator has undergone a major overhaul, and maybe even more than one. Now we won't burden you with what breaks in it. Let's talk about something else. If you find a specialist in J10 CVTs, or just Nissan crossovers, then using diagnostic software during a test drive you can see all its parameters, from the number of hours of operation to the ATF pressure in the circuits, the position of the stepper motor, signs of death of control valves and solenoids and belts slipping along the pulleys. If the JF015E Variator is still alive, then it is necessary to change the ATF in it every 30,000 kilometers, removing the pan and cleaning the magnets. Naturally, if there are a lot of chips on the magnets and it is better to go for repairs, it will be cheaper. JF011E Variator. The Variator of the 2-liter Qashqai is much more successful. It has no obvious shortcomings, and with adequate maintenance, this continuously variable unit can last more than 300,000 kilometers before overhaul. It has been noticed that the JF011E transmission dies due to improper maintenance, after replacing the ATF by bleeding and due to an incorrect level. Every 40,000 kilometers, the oil in it needs to be changed only by partial replacement, in which case both filters, external and internal, must be changed, and the magnets in the pan must be cleaned. If you have any doubts about the quality of his work, you just need a qualified specialist who can diagnose it thoroughly, and not on the fingers. The exhaust system on the Qashqai is rather weak. Over time, on almost all cars, the muffler begins to cut in one place, near the flanges. It all starts with the first flank, which is in front of the catalyst. The holes can be welded. You can cut off the old rotten flange and weld a new one. The main thing here is that the pipe to the catalyst is strong and does not crumble into dust, because this also happens often. When operating the Qashqai in regions with salty and damp winters, there are cases of through corrosion of the tube from the filler neck to the tank. If the car starts to smell like gasoline, it's corrosion. The all-wheel drive system on the Qashqai does not cause any problems. The electromagnetic clutch is reliable and durable. Sometimes there are cases of wear and jamming of the driveshaft crosspieces, but they can be replaced and updated by specialized services. Sometimes there are cases of spring breakage. As usual, only the bottom turn breaks off. It rests on the shock absorber cup through a rubber gasket. Over time it wears out and bursts. Then the spring begins to rub against its metal support. As a result, the protective coating on the spring is rubbed off, and then reagents and moisture lead to corrosion of the lower part of the coil. Actually, this turn cuts off at the source of corrosion. There are no revelations in the front suspension of the Qashqai, there are ordinary McPherson struts. The original L-arms sell complete for $105. Not a bad price for a complete set. The ball joint, as you can see, does not change separately. The original levers last for 150,000 kilometers. But the rear silent block of the levers may crack before this time. The original sells for $30 and can be repressed. Original front stabilizer links will cost $40. The support bearings are poorly protected from moisture and dirt. Usually last 100,000 kilometers. They cost $55. Front wheel bearings last 150,000 to 200,000 kilometers, cost $160 and are a single part with the hub. At the front of the Nissan Qashqai chassis, the front subframe silent blocks are asking for replacement. Due to their wear, dull knocks and impacts appear when driving over uneven surfaces. 4 original silent blocks will cost $80-$100. The steering rack of a Nissan Qashqai manages to run 200,000 kilometers, and then begins to tap due to wear on the bushings. This problem can be solved in a specialized workshop. The right CV joint on 2-liter Qashqais is rather weak and wears out after a mileage of 150,000 kilometers. Due to its wear, jerks appear when starting off, and vibrations when accelerating. Craftsmen do not buy an expensive CV joint as a whole, but only buy a tripod, O216 J10, for $50 and install it instead of a worn one. The rear suspension of the Nissan Qashqai is independent, 4 levers on each wheel. However, in Europe, front-wheel drive Qashqai have a simpler rear suspension, with a torsion beam. Original silent blocks for the rear suspension are not sold separately. Original upper control arms will cost $240-$370. This is expensive, so owners save themselves by repressing the silent blocks. There are a lot of offers for substitutes. We recommend choosing parts from one Japanese manufacturer. Such silent blocks will cost $10 a piece, and a silent block of the trailing arm will cost $30. Original rear stabilizer links can be purchased for $45. With the body of the Nissan Qashqai, everything is pretty good and standard. The metal is decently protected from corrosion, but the paint layer is rather weak. Chips from stones on new cars appeared quickly, and after a few years the varnish lost its original luster. The chrome decor becomes stained. But as a rule, rust does not appear, although years of operation do not spare the body of this car. The moldings on the doors can wear the paint down to the metal, and bugs will slowly crawl out of there. On the oldest Qashqais, rust appears at the joints of body parts. There is such a joint in the doorway next to the lights. Severe corrosion can occur at the front and rear of the sills. The original windshield of the Qashqai is weak. It quickly scratches and readily cracks from impacts from small stones. The windshield wiper trapeze on quite a few cars has broken due to burst joints between the rods. As a rule, the bushings of the right arm break off, because the lubricant is quickly washed out of them. There are not original trapezoids on sale, but bushings from Lottocalina are suitable for repairs. Water gets into the rear lights of the restyled Qashqais and causes the LEDs to fail. The LED electronic board can be bought in China and replaced. You can also buy a trunk lid molding handle there. Often when opening the trunk, it remains in the palm of your hand, because its fastenings break off. Sometimes the side and rear door locks on a Nissan Qashqai stop working. Often, the motors in them continue to hum. The cause of the malfunction is the destruction of the gears. Sometimes the driver's door lock cylinder gets stuck or doesn't work at all. And this despite the fact that no one uses such larvae. The interior of the Nissan Qashqai is made of simple materials. Hard plastic panels on many cars squeak while driving. The plastic steering wheel rim in simple versions quickly wears out and even melts in the heat. The knob of the manual transmission lever was subjected to deep polishing with the palm of the hand for up to 100,000 kilometers. On many Qashqais, mainly pre-restyling ones, chrome is peeling off the interior door handles. The plastic in the recesses for these handles also gets scratched. Owners do not hesitate to buy new handles in China and change them themselves. On many Qashqais, the steering wheel cable had to be changed. The symptoms of its breakdown are simple. The buttons on the steering wheel stop working. An error appears on the driver's airbag. A new original cable with a contact group costs about $100. There are many substitutes on the market. By the way, when replacing, you need to move the steering wheel position sensor from the faulty cable unit, otherwise you will have to go to calibrate the new sensor. Some Nissan Qashqai owners are familiar with the problem of heater fan failure. As usual, it stops turning due to wear on the brushes. You can buy a new original motor 27228H31C, but it will cost $350. There are plenty of substitutes at much more reasonable prices. There are even offers for brushes for its commutator. If the stove fan operates only at the highest speeds, then this is a sign of a failure of the resistor in the thermostat. The resistor can be replaced with a new one separately by removing the old one from the regulator. The regulator, as well as the electric motor of the stove, are located inside the front panel behind the trim above the driver's right foot. By the way, the pre-restyling Qashqais are famous for their weak stove, the performance of which is severely lacking in severe frosts. Owners are saved by the cardboard in the smile of the front bumper. Separately, we note that the performance of the stove on a Qashqai with a 1.6-liter engine with a CVT is very low, because all the heat is spent on heating the variator.